Welcome to the Boxing Gossip channel. Please hit subscribe if you are new. This video is intended to be the keys to victory for Anthony Joshua to beat Joseph Parker. We've started to build up to the big fight on this channel. About a week or so ago we had a review of The Gloves Are Off, Joshua versus Parker. A few days ago we had part 1 of the Keys to Victory series, where I discussed at some length what I would consider the keys to victory to be from a Joseph Parker perspective. In this video, the majority of time we'll be talking about what I consider the keys to victory, the tactics, and what they should be from an Anthony Joshua perspective. If you haven't already done so, it may be an idea to check out part 1 and to hear the Joseph Parker keys to victory, which are of course on the main channel page. Right, before I get into this, I did want to address something. I woke up this morning, checked my mobile phone as you do, and I had a load of messages. I had emails, I had tweets, I had Facebook messages, carrier pigeons, everything. And the majority of them were from Joseph Parker fans in New Zealand looking to contact me to get my take on the news relating to Joseph Parker's elbow surgery. Now, first and foremost, let me say that it's flattering for someone who runs a small-sized channel like myself that people are so keen to contact me when a piece of news breaks. So I want to say thank you to everyone who did that. Much appreciated. And because of the amount of people contacting, rather than write everyone a detailed reply, I thought I'd address it in this particular video. Now, with regards to this, the crux is that Parker's team have announced that in December of last year, he underwent a double surgery for an injury that was sustained to his elbow. And they believe that as this surgery has reportedly been a success, he is going to be a far better fighter going into the Anthony Joshua fight. They are suggesting that the reason for Parker's KO percentage reducing in recent fights, combined with the reason for Parker's weight gain in recent fights, are actually because he was struggling with this injury in his elbow. And they are suggesting that this is a huge advantage for Joseph Parker going into the fight with Joshua, that he is now going to be injury-free and that he has the benefit of this surgery. Now, to be fair to the New Zealand boxing community, I would say that across the contacts that I've had about this news story, the response has been mixed. However, I would say that a good proportion of the responses have been from New Zealand fans believing that this news is an absolute game changer from a Parker perspective, and that Anthony Joshua is now in a tremendous amount of trouble, given that Joseph Parker has had this surgery. Before we get into the keys to victory, I wanted to address this. From my mind, first and foremost, I am unclear quite how significant a piece of news at all this is. It doesn't go into a huge amount of detail about how severe the surgery was, how severe the injury was. It's unclear if there is any measurable or tangible improvement from a Joseph Parker perspective in the lead up to this fight. And to be honest, it could be that this is just more hype, trying to create interest and trying to build from the fight from a David Higgins perspective and from a Joseph Parker team perspective. It could be that in actual fact this isn't the most significant bit of news you're going to get. So the significance of this news is unclear to me. However, what I will say to those New Zealand fans who think that this piece of news means that their man has a far bigger chance of beating Anthony Joshua is that I really think you need to rethink your point of view. Let me put this to you in layman's terms. If you had to choose to fight two blokes, right? You had to fight one of the two blokes. One of them was recovering from a surgery, the other one wasn't. Which one do you think would pose the more formidable threat to you? Yeah, from my perspective, I haven't heard too many people talking about this, so maybe I'm the one losing my mind here. From my perspective, someone going into a fight off a relatively recent surgery is a huge negative. Now, we have no idea how significant this surgery was, how severe it is, what the recovery time's been, etc. So, yeah, I'm not going to lay it on too thick. But let me just say this. To anyone thinking that, the fact Parker's had this surgery means he's going to walk all over Joshua, I think there's a much stronger suggestion that it could be the other way around. Anyone coming out of a surgery, for me, is a severe doubt going into a fight, going into a 12-round war, when you are recently recovered from a surgery. In addition to that, how quick this fight has come after the surgery is also very, very, very intriguing. Now, the surgery happened in December. The fight is happening for March. People may say, oh, there's a 3-month, 4-month gap between the two. But what you're not factoring in is the training camp. How long will Parker have been in camp for this fight? Maybe Parker's had a 3-month training camp for this fight. Does that mean Parker couldn't punch properly for the first part of the camp? What would the impact of hitting the heavy bag have on that elbow injury and the recovery from that elbow surgery? Was Parker able to spar for the full duration of his camp? We don't know the answers to these questions. But what I will say is I think it's very, very, very naive to simply take at face value what a promoter is saying and to believe that Joseph Parker has been revolutionised and transformed into a completely different animal because he's had surgery on his elbow. Of course, injuries to an elbow can be damaging, and if Parker was being crippled by an elbow injury in recent fights, it is potentially to his benefit that he no longer has it. But it's not going to turn him into a different fighter. And I, for one, if this is a real bit of news and a real significant surgery, I, for one, have real doubts about Parker going into a fight of this magnitude so quickly after a surgery. And I have doubts as to what he's been doing in training camp. If he only had this surgery in December, could he punch correctly in January? Could the surgery recovery mean that his frame could take the full impact of a guy like Joseph Parker hitting a heavy bag or sparring? I really don't know the answer to these questions. The news does not go into the level of detail you would need to answer that. But if you're asking me, and a number of you have, if you're asking me for my reaction to this, on the whole, I would see it as a substantial negative from a Team Parker perspective, as opposed to the positives. Don't let yourself be taken in by the hype and by the promoter's spiel on this one. Just ask yourself, in any other walk of life, if someone's coming off a recent surgery, how would you feel about them in a major sporting event, especially a combat sport, especially when their training camp, one would assume, has overlapped with the recovery time from that surgery? Just something to bear in mind. Anyway, that's just an aside. That's not what this video is about. I've spent 8 minutes talking about it. Let's move on. Let's talk about Anthony Joshua's keys to victory from a Joseph Parker perspective. Usual disclaimer. People may be watching it and saying this is a one-sided video. It is a one-sided video. This video is purely from a Team Joshua perspective. That's not because I'm a Joshua fanboy. It's not because I want Joshua to win. We've done a separate video from a Parker perspective. Now we're doing one from an AJ perspective. So let's get into it. If I was in Joshua's corner, what would I be saying to Joshua? First and foremost, as I mentioned in the Parker keys to victory, my belief is AJ's biggest weakness is his engine. I believe that AJ's stamina is a problem, and I believe he has a tendency to punch himself out and to go through periods where he fades notably from rounds after he's been caught. Obvious examples, the Klitschko fight, the Dillian Whyte fight. So I would be talking to AJ about a measured performance from a stamina perspective. I would be very conscious of not punching yourself out. If, for example, AJ was to wobble Joseph Parker in the first round, I would not want to see AJ steaming in, trying to secure a devastating early stoppage when he's potentially still got a live and dangerous opponent in front of him. I want to see measure. I want to see patience from AJ. I don't want to see him doing what he did in the Klitschko fight, where he goes all out and leaves himself vulnerable. Don't get me wrong, if Parker is there to be taken out, take him out. But what I'm not looking for is a 40-punch combination to take him out. If you need to risk a 40-punch combination to take him out, move away, reset yourself, get some distance, and start again. AJ could be 7 or 8 rounds up in this fight. He could drop Parker in the 9th. He could go for the close. And if he misjudges it, AJ could get taken out in the 10th. You know, that is how vulnerable he's looked in the Dillian Whyte fights and the Klitschko fights. And a guy like Joseph Parker, for me, is the kind of fighter who could take him out if he puts himself in that position. In fact, I'd give Parker a better chance of taking him out than Whyte and Klitschko, who failed to take him out, because of the way Parker fights, his fast hands, his combinations, his fitness, etc. So that would be the first thing I'd be looking for from AJ. Poise, patience, and a sort of measured approach when closing, and just generally, you know, AJ's a very, very explosive fighter. Very, very explosive. If he's winning the rounds comfortably early on, just take a little bit of explosion out of there. Factor in that Parker's never been dropped before. Factor in that Parker's got experience of going 12 rounds with dangerous opponents. You've got to avoid punching yourself out. You've got to avoid that gas tank emptying. You're a very, very big man. And, you know, that has been your biggest weakness in fights today. So that'd be the major bit of advice I'd be giving him. Second bit of advice I'd be talking to about AJ is a stiff jab. A jab that can stop an opponent in tracks. When I was doing my Joseph Parker video, I talked at some length about Joseph Parker coming into range. I talked about the fact that Parker, for me, is not going to be able just to stand at that 3/4 range and trade long distance punches with AJ. I think Parker's going to have to get up close. I think he's going to have to do that to stifle AJ's work, to take some of the power out of AJ's shots, and to try and put combinations of shots together to bank body work against AJ. I think AJ's got to work on a big jab, a stiff jab that keeps Joseph Parker off him. The kind of jab that Parker will be coming in, he'll get caught with this jab, and it will stop him in his tracks, and it will mean that AJ is able to keep the fight at the distance he's most comfortable at, which is that 3/4 range. I want to see AJ use his jab with a bit more regularity in this fight. I'm looking for less blood and guts than we saw in the Klitschko fight. I'm looking for a measured performance, as I've already referred to, and that jab to control the pace, to control the range, and to stop his opponent from getting into that engine room is key. It really is key for me. In terms of offensive weaponry and what I would like AJ to be doing against Joseph Parker, I'm going to talk about 2 specific things. The first thing is that AJ is a good counterpuncher. He's got good timing. We've seen it time and time and time again. And I would like to see AJ try and throw with Parker if he believes it's safe to do so. Parker does have a habit of leaving himself exceptionally exposed when he's engaging. You know, he will throw punches, they'll be ever so slightly wild, and as we've talked about before on this channel, Parker will stand there with his hands throwing punches, with his chin up in the air, and no hand to protect his guard. If AJ believes it's safe to do so, I would like to see him counter-punching, timing, and throwing with Joseph Parker, so that he can catch Parker whilst Parker is trying to get his work off. For me, AJ is probably the better counter-puncher of the two. He's possibly got a better timing of the two, and he's got very, very underrated shot selection and an increasing arsenal of punches, which we'll come on to in just a second. I think that's when Joseph Parker's at his most vulnerable. Now, the consensus from Parker fans is very much that Joseph Parker cannot be stopped and that he's got an iron chin. I even had one person email me this week, and that person will be watching, they know who they are, telling me that Samoans cannot be knocked out. Well, let me tell you, I'm a firm believer that any man can be knocked out. And Joseph Parker has given us no reason to suspect he's got a bad chin, but he has yet to face anyone who is a noteworthy puncher in world boxing. You know, he has not fought a top puncher in world boxing. He has not fought a top 10 puncher in world boxing. And Anthony Joshua does represent that threat. If AJ can land those counter-punch power punches while Parker is engaging, while Parker's momentum is going into a punch, and while Parker's chin critically is straight up in the air, it's very, very, very bad news for Parker. So that's what I'd be talking to AJ about. If you're able to get him in your preferred range, perhaps if you're able to get him up against the ropes, if he's engaging, look to time him then. Look to see if that chin is up in the air where it's been in previous fights, and look to, you know, hit him there whilst he is engaging, etc. That's going to hurt a hell of a lot more than if he's able to take it when Parker's in a defensive construct. On another offensive note, we've referenced the Anthony Joshua Arsenal and punch variety. I want to see him throw the uppercut. The uppercut is a punch that has been used to real effect. It's not a punch that he throws too regularly, but when he does throw it, it tends to be a real dangerous weapon. Who can forget the uppercut he landed to take Dillian Whyte out? Who can forget that devastating uppercut he landed on Vladimir Klitschko? Probably the punch of the year 2017 was the uppercut he landed on Vladimir Klitschko. I genuinely believe that Joseph Parker is ripe for that uppercut. We've talked about his lack of head movement. We've talked about the construction of his guard. We've talked about the fact that his head is often straight in the middle. If Parker is up against the ropes, if Parker is even successful on closing down the reins and coming into the pocket, I think that uppercut is a real good weapon for AJ. I think Parker may not see it coming, and I think the way Parker's defensive construct is, he could be very, very open for that uppercut, and it's a devastating, devastating punch when it lands. I think there's also this consensus that I've talked about, that AJ is going to be better at that three-quarter range and that he wants to keep Parker off him. I do believe that to be the case, but let me just say this. If Parker is able to close that gap, in terms of AJ's offensive weapons, he's not going to be able to throw the long 1-2 with anywhere near as much power if Parker's 6 inches off him. But he could easily throw a shortened up uppercut up the middle and catch Parker on the chin. And again, I think that could be a very, very solid defensive weapon. So, offensive weapon indeed. So overall, my keys to victory for AJ: patience, measurement, not punching yourself up. Try and keep the fight at your distance. Try and keep the fight at your pace. If you're able to keep the fight at your distance, get the jab going. Try and keep Parker off you. Do what you do best with the long distance, three-quarter range, straight punches. Time Joseph Parker. Look to counter him. Recognise that he's got a tendency to leave his chin up in the air. Counter punch using your big power punches. And don't forget that uppercut. You know, Parker's the kind of fighter whose head could be straight up in the middle of the play. Use the uppercut. Find a home for that. And I think, you know, that could be a very, very effective weapon. It's building up to be a great fight. There's going to be further videos to come. Today is Thursday. You're probably looking at the full prediction for this dropping Sunday or Monday, you know, something like that. Obviously, podcast next Wednesday to fully discuss the fight, get the predictions of the podcast panelists. I'm sure we will be having a weigh-in video to react to the weigh-in of these two guys. There's a gambling special on odds for the fight coming out to Patreon subscribers next week as well. So yeah, there's a lot going to be on, a lot more coverage coming on this fight. It's going to be a real exciting one. The closer we get, the more excited I get. It really has the potential to be a very good fight. Let me know your thoughts. Specifically interested to hear people's feedback and opinions on the keys to victory that I've highlighted from an Anthony Joshua perspective. Please do check out the Joseph Parker version that I've already uploaded to the channel as well. Usual request, please hit the thumbs up button to support this video. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already done so, especially if you want to check out all of that big fight coverage coming up. Other than that, let me just thank you for taking the time to watch my video. Appreciate it.